I want to welcome everybody to the Every Brain Matters speakers meeting. Every Brain Matters is a community of support and advocacy based on science and live experience. Our motto unites us and symbolizes both freedom from marijuana and the drug culture expansion. Hi, everyone. I'm Corrine Gasper, in case you're wondering, and I'm the director of Jennifer's Messenger, an organization named after my daughter, who lost her life by a medical marijuana impaired driver. I and Jennifer's Messengers works in partnership with Every Brain Matters, and I'm very glad to be the host tonight. Every Brain Matters support groups are for people that have been harmed by marijuana. We are built on a foundation of love, willingness, and honesty. We seek to create a culture of healing by helping each other and by working the 12 steps or any program that is beneficial to the member. We embrace proven principles of recovery, and we will find that through the support group, we find moments of happiness, unconditional love, spiritual growth, and freedom. The road to recovery is not an easy one, but together we find hope in our shared experiences, and as a result, we create a foundation of sustainable recovery. We are honored this evening to have Amy Neville as our speaker. Amy's son had a cannabis use disorder at the age of 13, and by 14 made the deadly mistake of swallowing a pill that contained a lethal dose of fentanyl. Since then, Amy has dedicated her life to educating families and communities about the harms of fentanyl, cannabis, and other drugs. She especially focuses her messages on the predatory practices of social media, including Snapchat. Amy, thank you so much for being here and sharing your son Alex with us. The floor is all yours.
Thank you for having me. Like you said, we'll kind of start backwards. Normally I have some kind of prepared presentation, but I haven't really talked much about Alexander's marijuana use as far as the role it had in everything, because I only have such a limited amount of time. So I'm thinking about what to say tonight, and I'm just going to kind of start at the beginning, right? And take you guys through where things were, how things ended up, kind of, and where we are now. So long story short, Alex lived 14 years. I'm pretty sure I could talk to him for at least that amount of time, given the last 2 years life that I've had without him and what I've learned and the things we've been doing. He's had such an impact. Like, I can't even tell you. In fact, here, you can see him real quick. There's his adorable face. Yes, he's cute. It's okay. You could totally say he's cute. I would agree with you. I think he's adorable. But anyway, so Alexander was a pretty spirited kid. I always joke that he was high maintenance from the second I was pregnant with him. Like, I had blackouts throughout my pregnancy. There was a point where I couldn't drive anymore because I would black out. I was sick every single day, multiple times a day. But I was so happy to be, all of those things were just signs of life to me. And I was so thrilled because I had actually had a couple of miscarriages previously. So if I was sick, I knew I was still pregnant. So it was it was a blessing, right? And, when he was born, he was colicky for 4 months. We got the bonus month in there. Everybody says, oh, if they're colic, they'll have it for the first 3 months. Nope, we got to go 4 months with that. That was rough. So rough, in fact, that when I was pregnant with my daughter, when I was pregnant with Alex, I didn't know any better, right? So I was just pregnant and happy, and life was great. When I was pregnant with my daughter, I was like, oh my gosh, what if she's colicky? I don't know if I can go through that again. That was some really rough times. From there, Alex had night terrors until he was about 2.5, where he would wake up in the middle of the night, crying, yelling, walking around his room. We learned the way to deal with that was to just let it run its course, and then just keep him safe during those times. And in the morning, most people who have night terrors don't even know what happened, and they're rested, and you're dragging because you were up with them for that 20, 40 minutes, whatever it was in the night. But by 2.5, those things subsided. That kiddo didn't start sleeping through the night until he got into school. He was a night owl for sure. Which was always an interesting, because I'm an early bird. He would be so I like to get up early and go to bed early, and that kiddo liked to be up at night. And that was all the way, up until he passed away. But he first became curious about drugs in first grade. That first drug prevention week at school, the campaign was drug abuse is life abuse. They still use it to this day. And that first grade is when I decided red ribbon week was no good. Like, I do not like red ribbon. I'm not a fan of red ribbon week. I felt like it was minimizing the issues when we needed to be real with these kids. You would wear pajamas to dream away drugs, or dress like a cowboy to give drugs the boot. Like, what does that even really mean? And that actually comes up later. So Alex comes home from school, and first grade, he's like, so tell me more about what it means. What is this? What is marijuana? What does it do to your body? What happens to my brain? Like, it was like as if you and I had heard about some exotic vacation, and we're like, ooh, we'd like to go there. That was his reaction to learning about drugs in first grade. So we knew then we were going to have some trouble. We were in trouble with this kiddo, that this experimental phase was going to come, and we needed to be ready for it. And so throughout his little life, those conversations around these things became more grown up as the years went by. We were very open. We talked about everything in our house, sometimes to my discomfort, but everything was on the table in our house. In fact, Alexander's biggest complaint about us as parents was that he overshared with us. And of course, as a parent whose kid feels that way about them, I took that as a win. That was a big deal to me. I'm like, great, you keep sharing, whether I want to hear it or not. I did have to learn, like, are you telling me just to listen? Or are you telling me because you want me to help you solve a problem? Because every time he got to a point where he would tell me something, and then I'd want to solve the problem he was having with his friend or whatever. And sometimes he's like, can I just tell you things? And so I learned how I was supposed to listen at various times. When he was growing up, he and his friends would do things like they would change their screen name on their video games to Blaze 420, or, stupid jokes. I'm sure you've all seen it within your own kids. They think they're being funny. And I would always talk to them and ask them all to change their names back to what, something more appropriate for their age. And like, is that really the impression you want people to have of you out there? They would take that drug abuse is life abuse. They give out these red and white wristbands and pencils that say it on there. So what shouldn't come as any surprise, those kiddos would take that marker, a red marker, and color out the last couple words. And so it would say drug abuse is life. They would sharpen the pencils down to where they said drug abuse is life. Like, they would just take off that word abuse and modify it. But, they're impulsive, silly boys, but every time that stuff happened, I'd be like, I always ask them, like, why is that funny to you? I don't get it. Like, fill me in, what's going on? And, they really don't even know either, other than it's something taboo and they're making light of it. And that's kind of a natural thing for these kiddos, right? And sometimes I always wonder, maybe we were too open with this kid. Maybe we should have been more fear-based. I don't know. And I wish I'd go back to if I could get a do-over, I'd go back to 2015. That's where I would start my do-over. Like I said, I'm just checking my little bullet points here. So like I said, we would have conversations with him about these things. And once he got around the time he was going to start doing these things, it was when middle school started. Like I said, Alex was an intense kid from the second I was pregnant with him. So when puberty hit, things were intense. His mood swings were moodier. His fun was more fun. His sadness was more sad. And one thing I left out too, growing up, Alex sometimes would have get so angry, he'd black out when he was starting from a toddler all the way up until he passed away. So, that was something that we dealt with and trying to figure out how to work on those things. But it was 7th grade when he started with cannabis, and that was a big deal to us, and he didn't do he didn't try to hide it. He, in fact, so for his 13th birthday, his sister and I, that weekend, he was very insistent that his sister and I go away on a scout trip because he wanted to have these boys over and whatever. Normal, 13. I know most of these boys. They've been in elementary school with him. I've been their Cub Scout leader. So what's the big deal, right? But he doesn't want the girls around. Okay, fine. So my daughter and I take this camping trip, and the day we come home, I'm like, something's off here. Something's not right in this house. I just don't know what it is yet. But my mom instincts were like, something's going on. And I had gone out to the back patio and I found the rolling papers. I went into the garage and I found more. So those kiddos Alex got me out of the house to have the opportunity to, he and his friends to give this a try for his 13th birthday. Yes, his dad was home, but these kids, Aaron went up to our room, turned on a movie, put on his headphones so he wouldn't hear all the noise they were making. They rolled up a towel and put it at the door so no smells would get into the bedroom. Like, they really thought it out, which blows my mind how methodical they were about their plans, right? They planned this out. Anyway, so that happens, but the side effect it has on Alex, one of the side effects it has on Alex is that it's calming his brain. So he gets into that. He's not looking necessarily to get high. He's looking to have that calm feeling of his brain, because he had a very noisy brain. And so once that happened, I'm like, we need to go start seeing a therapist stat. So we found a really good therapist that we really liked, that we got him in with. And this therapist, we're working with him on least invasive to most invasive treatment for ADD. So he diagnosed Alex with ADD, which actually, when we learned that, made a lot of sense, because Alex and we didn't know there were 7 different types of ADD, right? We thought it was the hyperactive, can't hold focus, and that was it. And that did not describe Alex. He was quite the opposite. He was hyper focused and would learn all these facts and figures. Like with cannabis, he could tell you any strain for whatever ailed you. He knew all that information. It started with history throughout his life. He knew everything about certain periods of history, and he could share that with you. And then it became about cannabis when he was 13 years old. And again, he could tell you, he'd always tell me, like, if I was like in a bad mood, Mom, you need this kind of, I'm like, I wish you didn't know that. I wish that wasn't your response to me. He would send me videos. Mom, watch this video. Hear what this guy has to say about what it does for your mood and why, I should be doing it. And I would watch the videos, much to my dismay, and then I'd have to come back and be like, well, here's why he's saying that. And we always took the scientific approach with Alex. Well, here's what's happening to your brain. Here's what the long-term effects of that are going to be on you as you get older. Because, he would fall into that, well, it's legal. And of course, it's not legal for you, and all the struggles that you all have probably dealt with at some point. And I'll be honest with you, I voted for the legalization of marijuana in California at the time. So that would have been 2012 or 2013, I think it was. They're going to offer more money to schools. My kids are young kids in elementary school. This kind of sounds like a good thing. And I personally have never even tried marijuana at all in my life. Or my husband, on the other hand, he was out of rehab by the time he was 19 years old. So we have very different perspectives on it, but like, these are our kids. We can take care of our kids, right? That's our job. And we're take care of our kids, teach them right from wrong and all the things. But man, boy, that was the joke's on me when it comes to that. Apparently that's not how life works, you guys. What do you know? I had to learn that the hard way. So Alex's ADD and the weed thing. So we're I don't want to medicate him for the ADD because I don't know how that's going to interfere when and if he should smoke weed again, and what if he takes something else, And the other thing too with Alex, he wasn't very, he didn't hide it. I would wake up in the middle of the night and smell it and have to come downstairs. And it was just, we would do all the things. We'd take everything away from him, throw it away, and here it's showing back up again. And it was just this constant cycle. We had a couple of times where looking back on it, right? Because at the time, I think we're still dealing with puberty, trying to get his ADD at a manageable place. But looking back on it, I can see where these were maybe some psychotic breaks where it really impacted him. We were in the hospital twice after he hadn't used for a certain amount of time, right? I don't know. It could have been withdrawal. I don't know, because we weren't exploring it that way at that time. So unfortunately, I don't have the answer to that, but just what I've learned along the way and looking back at that, I think, okay, that could have been this. I think he was starting to show signs of schizophrenia when he passed away. And all these little inklings now that make some sense to me, but at the time were very confusing. And again, I thought we were dealing with really intense puberty and other things, but twice he ended up in the hospital. And after the second time, and not because I was afraid he was going to hurt himself. I didn't think he would kill himself necessarily, but I think in one of these episodes, he might fall over the stair railing or something where he would really get hurt, and he couldn't get he was in these fits where he couldn't get his emotions under control. And of course, we're these catalysts for those emotions most of the time. And so we were no help in that. And the problem was bigger than us. And so February of 2020, we put him in a mood and anxiety program that treated mild substance use. So that was an inpatient thing. That was what I thought that was going to be like one of the hardest things we'd ever have to do. Leaving him there that day was a horrible feeling. I'm sure you guys, some of you who've experienced this have been there. It is the worst. I remember him hugging his dad goodbye and not even looking at me. Like, he was so mad at me over it. This is his cat. So we put him in that mood and anxiety program, and about 10 days in, COVID hits. And now they can't get the full effects of the program. Part of this program was really kind of, was rewiring the brain to really wanting to learn to surf and horseback ride, all these healthy activities that once he leaves the program, it's like, okay, Mom, I really love surfing. And then we can continue pursuing that. Or I really loved horseback riding or rock climbing or whatever the activity was. And then we would be able to continue on that path. And then of course the outpatient piece that would have gone along with that, but those things didn't happen. So he spent 30 days basically locked in a house, or I guess it would have been about 20 days locked in a house with 5 other teenage boys. He was the youngest, and they went a little stir crazy, surprising, not surprisingly. And he came home from that though, and he was definitely more engaged. He got better at stopping himself before the freak out would get over the top, and be like, okay, why am I acting like this? What's going on inside? What can I do differently? And then he went back to hanging out with his dad every single night. He and his dad would be up to like 10, 11 o'clock every single night, watching a movie, chit-chatting. And that had been that way for a long time. So they went back to that routine. Alex was insistent that we have dinner together every single night, at the kitchen table. I love that, of course, as a mom. I'm like, I've only been asking you guys to do this for how long? But sure, I'm ready. You're on board. I'm on board. He would go grocery shopping with me. He discovered he liked salsa, and I love salsa. We'd eat chips and salsa all the time together. Things were getting better for him. I do know that he did smoke weed a couple of times in there. And long story short, he's like, hey, I'm being more responsible. I'd like to put my video games in my room. Can we try it? And up to that point, I had a hard rule that the video games stayed in the common area because I did not want him isolating in his room. But at this point, we're all home. My husband's trying to work from home. I'm trying to teach classes through Zoom that I'm doing. And so it makes sense to do it at the time. So we let him put his TV up in his room and his video games, but the door had to stay open and he had to be responsive to me calling to him. There were rules around it. And we're following those rules. And one afternoon he broke his TV, and it was maybe 10 days in on trying this experiment, right? The TV gets broken. And I'm like, well, we're not buying you a new TV. You have to buy your own new TV if that's what you want to do. And he had his own little eBay business at that time where he was selling off his childhood toys. He would ride a skateboard or bike up to the UPS store and drop off the packages of things he sold. And so, he had the money to buy a TV. Well, he didn't want to buy a TV, right? Because I don't know why, but his grandma bought him a TV. We hadn't put in his room yet, but his grandma, one day a TV shows up. Actually, it was probably about 3 days before he died. This TV shows up from his grandma. And we didn't put it up there yet. I'm like, well, it's not a good TV. It wasn't a good TV for his video games. You need to pay for the upgrade. So you can play your video games on there, whatever. And so he kind of got bored. And he started to isolate a little bit in his room at that point. And so we'd call him down, make him go out. He'd ride a skateboard. Let's watch a movie, whatever we could do to try to engage him and keep him out of his room. But there was this point where that intensity really amped up. And there was right about that same time, I would smell weed every single night. And it was that, again, we're back to spinning our wheels, right? And so that intensity amps up again. He's sleeping at weird times. He's throwing up. And I'm like, okay, what is going on, dude? Like, I want to take you to the doctor. Something's not right. Are you using something different? What is going on? And he's like, no, I was up late. I ate something bad. And again, looks a lot like intense puberty. So things kind of seemed in line. I'm like, okay, well, if you're not better soon, I'm going to take you to the doctor. We're going to go to the doctor. A couple of days after that, he's like, okay, I got to talk to you guys. And he sits us down at the kitchen table and he says, I wanted to experiment with Oxy. I got it from a dealer on Snapchat. It has a hole on me and I don't know why. And of course, we're surprised, but not completely shocked because the way that week had gone. The best we could tell at that point was he had maybe been taking these pills 10 days tops. You know, he's still considered to have been in that experimental phase. And no one was talking about fentanyl at that time. So from there, you know, that following morning, I called a treatment place. He came to us with a plan. He's like, this is where I want to go. I want to be in by Wednesday. Okay, great. We're going to make this happen. So I called. They needed to call me back with their recommendation. And so that day I took him to get his haircut because he had been begging me for months to get his haircut. And his dad came and picked him up from there and took him out to lunch. They went and got candy. And then he's like, I want to go see some friends before I go to treatment. Okay, fine. He came home after 9 o'clock that night and we said hi to him. He went right up to his room and that was the last we saw of him until the following day when I went to wake him for his orthodontist appointment. And he was gone. He looked like he was sleeping on his beanbag chair. And that night, when I woke up that morning, I was like, that's so weird. I didn't smell weed last night. You know, I had this like, that's strange. And then I went about, I had to teach some yoga classes and do whatever. And then it was time to go wake him up. And it was, you know, the paramedics came and took him away. And you know, one thing that makes me crazy is lots of things make me crazy in all of this, but is the fact that, you know, the treatment center called me back 4 minutes after his time of death. Like, we had no idea what we were dealing with. We thought we were ready for this kid's experimental phase, but we couldn't have been prepared. We had no idea. We had no idea about fentanyl. We thought it was still somebody stealing grandma's pills and selling them to friends. And that, you know, that was that. But unfortunately, we quickly learned about fentanyl right after that. And, you know, we were confused at first, like, how the heck did we get here, right? You know, and that one pill that Alex took, you guys, I don't know if you guys know this, if you guys are up on the fentanyl situation, but all these illicit pills in the black market are fentanyl. They could be labeled Oxy, Percocet, Adderall, Xanax, you name it. They are made with. They're not even laced with. They're counterfeited. They're totally counterfeited to look like other things. And then things like meth and heroin's being completely taken over by it, but meth and cocaine, things like that are laced with it. So it's truly crazy. So after Alex died, I set out to learn everything I could about fentanyl, like because if we had known about fentanyl, if we had saw it on the news, watched it in a school presentation, because we were those parents, we did all those things because we knew this day was coming, right? Not that day, but the day where this kid was going to be in this, need our help really bad, even though we thought we were doing all the things we were supposed to be doing. And I learned everything I could about fentanyl. And then fast forward a couple months, I asked one of his friends I'm out to lunch with, and I'm like, hey, do you happen to know where he got it? And she gives me the Snapchat information. So I turn it over to the DEA, whatever. A couple months, October after that, this mom contacts me and she says, hey, are you this person? Because there was an article in the Orange County Register. And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, I got something to show you. And she sends me some pictures off of her son's phone. Her son has passed away from these pills. Same dealer, and this dealer's talking about Alex on in the snaps, and they say, oh, I only sold bud to this kid. I didn't even start carrying jars, which are the 100 pills per jar. Somebody explained it to me, but I don't need to understand that part. But you know, he claims in there how he only ever sold Alex weed. I would never sell kid pills, but the guy's name is Smokey, but it's Smoxy. I'm like, Oxy's in your name. How can you say that you just started carrying these pills? You didn't just change your screen name. Like, this is ridiculous. But long story short, it's now a cold case, and there's, at least 4 deaths that I know of linked to this guy, and there's nothing they can do about it at this point. Snapchat, I could go on for days about Snapchat, you guys. I've been publicly fighting Snapchat. I'm very open about that. I was with some parents, a group of parents, where one of the parents has another organization. We were having a meeting November 2020, and I was like, when are we going to get loud about Snapchat? And they're like, no. Let's work with them. Let's help them. Let's work with them from the inside, tell them what's wrong with their product. I'm like, okay, fine. I guess I could see that, right? It seems like, for me, the path of least amount of stress. And so months later, we have this meeting with Snapchat. Oh, we're so sorry for your loss. We had no idea this was a problem we didn't know this was a problem, which is a lie, because you could see it showing up in the news since 2017. And so they lied to our faces. And, these other bunch of parents continued to work with Snapchat, with myself and a couple other parents, like, we're not the play nice in the sandbox people nowadays. That's not the path we're taking. I was so mad too, because, had we gotten loud when we wanted to? I mean, if one family hurt us, that's one family. Like, that's maybe potentially one kid that could still be here. I mean, kids are dying every single day the same way Alex did. It is insane the amount of people I hear from. The school near me here in Arizona just had a death on Monday. I'm going to their football game tonight. It's their homecoming. They're honoring this kid. Like, it crushes me, because, then I internalize that. Like, how did I not get to that kid? I'm right here. I'm down the street. Like, how did I not get to that kid? And now they want to do all the things, and we're going to have a meeting on Monday to come up with a plan to help them, because it's actually a school for adjudicated youth, and they actually live on campus, and it's a really amazing program. Years and years ago, before I was even pregnant with Alex, I opened a Starbucks and hired a bunch of kids from there that were in the barbershop program, and so it's a really neat program, but it's taking deaths to get people's attention. And on the flip side of that, it's we're not able to deal with other issues, right? Because this is so prevalent right now. We can't talk about the marijuana, and it's important, or the cannabis. I learned in the meeting that we need to call it cannabis, right? Is that accurate in that meeting in DC? So we're losing sight of that too, because now we know the negative effects of cannabis, and we're not really addressing them unless you're personally impacted, right? And then everybody else just thinks you're crazy. So how do we deal with that? I don't even know. So after Alex died, I started learning everything I could about fentanyl, and then I started really looking deep at the social media issues. And so I travel the country talking about both those things. But part of my learning process was, I met with youth and I asked them questions, like trying to figure out, like, what do we do for you? Because our life experience my teenage life experience doesn't include social media. So I don't know what's going on. You need to tell me. So we've come up with some things from the youth, but something that the youth told me time and time again was that their perception of drug use is that you try some things, you have this experimental phase, and maybe you get hooked. And then maybe 8 to 10 years later, you're clean again, and you're sober, and now you can go be a motivational speaker at a high school. I'm really paraphrasing, but that was horrific to me, because I could see why they would say that, because that's what we've seen. That's what we're telling these kids. We're not giving them, and the other side too is, as we've heard for years, oh, drugs are going to kill your kids. Drugs are going to kill your kids. And then they didn't. And now they do. And nobody's listening to that message. We're really got ourselves in a tailspin here. So these kids and their perspective was very interesting. And then this one kid says to me, and I will never forget, he's like, we keep getting told just say no, but what are we even saying no to? Like, okay, so the level of honesty, we need to have such a level of honesty there. We have a film that we made on the fentanyl crisis, and people are like, oh, well, it's a scare tactics don't work. I'm like, it's not a scare tactic. It's a true story, and the truth is scary. So if that's the scare tactic part, sure. Okay, fine. But we need to tell these kids the truth. And that's a large part I think part of our problems is people aren't willing to talk about it. Social media continues to lie, and they paint this rosy picture of here's what we're doing, especially Snapchat. You guys, Snapchat is the villain, is super villain in all of this. You know, they love to tell us that they have 90% of their 13 to 24-year-olds are on their platform, of the United States 24-year-old, or 90% of the United States 13 to 24-year-olds use their platform. Like that's some badge of honor. I'm like, that's horrific. That's your reason you need to do better. And they don't. They continue to lie, and they continue to brush it off and sweep it under the rug and use these other family organizations to kind of run cover for them. And it's truly heartbreaking. One other interesting thing that happened, because I think we're coming up close to the end of time here. I had a group of college students reach out to me. Hey, we want to talk about fentanyl, how the crisis, and how can we help? Well, I get on this call with them. They didn't want to talk about that. They wanted to know if the cannabis they're buying in the streets is safe. They were trying to find that out for me. And I was like, well, we're talking, and I don't know they're buying it from the streets yet. And I'm like, well, you're getting it from a dispensary, right? Which still isn't that great as far as I'm concerned. But they're like, well, no, we still buy it from the streets because one, you get a better high, and two, it's cheaper. I was at a loss for words. And I told myself, I don't even know what to say to you right now, because I want to think that you know better. But yet here we are having this conversation. And so I'm like, at the end of the day, you guys are going to do what you're going to do, but your life is on the line. Like that's all there is to it. And so honestly, I feel that if we're going to break this cycle of the social media issues, the drug issues, we have to get to the parents of those 8 to 11-year-olds, and we have to get to those 8 to 11-year-olds. I don't have the answer for that. I've been asking for the last year for great ideas to work on that issue, because I do have some funding to where we could create something around that. And no ideas have shown up, and I don't have any of my own. So I'm throwing that out here. If you guys have any great ideas on how we can get to 8 to 11-year-olds in an impactful way, I'm all ears. I'm all ears. So I think I rambled on enough. I think I told you everything in the world. But if you have questions, I will answer them.
Hi, Amy. I'm so sorry for your loss. It's horrible. Her tragic story. I'm wondering what legal resources you have. Sorry to be so brutal and harsh about it, but have you gotten any sort of compensation?
No. So I'll tell you, I have no problem talking about it. So we, has anybody heard of Carrie Goldberg? Oh, she's amazing. She's absolutely amazing. She's all about social media victims' rights. She took me on along with some others. So I'll just back up. That dad from that original group, he was like, well, you can't sue Snapchat. And I kind of took him at his word for that, because he's a smart guy. He's a really smart guy. You can't sue Snapchat. And then fast forward a few months, I'm talking to Gretchen Peters, if you know who she is, from the Alliance to Counter Crime Online, who's another fabulous.
I was thinking of another Gretchen Peters, sorry.
Gretchen Peters is amazing. Look her up, Alliance to Counter Crime Online. And she's like, well, you can sue Snapchat. Why can't you? And then all of a sudden they clicked. I'm like, we can't sue Snapchat and win, but we can sue Snapchat. So that took on a whole new meaning for me. So our lawsuit's about to be announced, actually. We're with Carrie Goldberg, and then the social media victims law firm that started about 1.5 years ago. And they're doing really big things. And our goal isn't a financial compensation, even though that, they're like, well, you have to give us a number. I'm like, you cannot ask that of me. There is no way I can do that. I will throw up right now. I can't, don't make me even think about something like that.
I know. And I know that you don't want money. Nothing can repay.
But we want the bad publicity for them. We're hoping for Snapchat to be tried in the court of public opinion, essentially, is what that.
Yeah, because it will be a deterrent. If people know that there are at least lawyers that are interested, it might.
Yes. That's what we're hoping. So that's the best we're hoping for. We expect to lose, but if we lose with some pretty serious PR around it, I think we'll come out ahead in that sense. It'll be hard to do, that's for sure. And then of course, you guys are probably familiar with, if you're not familiar with Section 230, it protects social media companies. Basically, it follows the old rules of the phone company. And so if, it's happening online, they can't be held accountable, even though they let these these drug dealers, really, it's an open air drug market right there in our kids' pockets. And all I want for Section 230 legislation is to add a duty of care. So if they added they don't have to change anything else, just add this duty of care. And then the duty of care will give parents their day in court. They can file a lawsuit and a judge can look at it and say, did SNAP do anything? Like, maybe this account's been reported 5 times and they never removed it. So maybe they have some liability in that. Or maybe they keep removing the same person over and over again. This person keeps outsmarting them. And so then maybe there's a different issue, so hopefully that will change. That would be an interesting thing to change for there. But yeah, so you'll probably be seeing that in the news. And we've had 3 rallies in front of Snapchat headquarters right now. The first time we had a rally, they ginsed out the executive VP of global policy calls me and she wanted to talk to me about my son's drug dealer on Snapchat. I'm like, it's no coincidence you're calling me the day before the rally. We'll talk on Monday. Like, I'm not doing this right now. I'm not playing this game with you. And when I talked to her, and she was in that original call too. It comes back to, well, we're a small company. And I'm like, I said, stop. You cannot say that you are a small company anymore. You have over 3,000 employees, multinational offices, you bring in billions of dollars. That is not a small company. Like, just stop.
Yeah.
So we also filed them to be labeled a notorious market. Have you guys heard of that? Do you know what that is? So you can submit a submission with the U.S. Trade Representative's office, and we made the argument that they allowed the sale of counterfeit goods on their platform, in this case, counterfeit medicines. And so we didn't expect it to go anywhere. However, I had to be interviewed by 5 U.S. patent attorneys. The media called over it. They weren't labeled, which we didn't expect that anyway. It was just to kind of keep poking at them. And then we got a kind of an honorable mention in their actual paper that they put together at the end of the notorious market filing phase. And so I considered it a win, way further than I ever thought of. And then just last week, we released our paper on best practices to stop drug trafficking on social media. And we spent the last 9 months interviewing experts in this field. We put together a commission of I'm not an expert. I'm a mom I was the vice chair of the commission. But we interviewed all these people and we put together our findings in this report, and that actually just released week before, I can't remember now. So we just released it. And so we've been out I just spoke in Indianapolis at the National Association of Drug Diversion Investigators Conference on this paper yesterday. So that's been a pretty big deal, but we'll see what happens with that. We have some plans, some tricks up our sleeves, but we'll see where it goes.
You've just reminded me, I don't know if you saw a case, it was a couple of months ago in England. There was a little boy who was on life support. I think his name was Archie. He's about 12-year-old boy. He was on life support for several months since May because he got into some sort of a dare competition on Snapchat, and he ended up strangling himself.
Oh, one of the pass out challenges. These are I haven't heard of him, but I've met other families like him. It's horrific. It's horrific. These kids don't deserve this. And there's actually a girl in Texas, a 9-year-old girl that just died from the choking challenge on TikTok. And those of you that are public with these issues, the public is not kind. Like, I get hate mail all the time. Oh, your daughter's gonna die the same way. You're a horrible parent. It's your kid's fault for putting the pill in his mouth in the first place. You name it, they've said it. But these poor parents, but you know what? So what? Let's say all that's true. Alex still didn't deserve to die for it.
I know. Please don't take it.
No, not at all. But that's what this poor girl, 9 years old. And so everybody comes after these poor parents. Like, well, what are you doing letting your kid on TikTok at 9? She can't be on until she's 13. That is not the point here. The point is the fact that at some point she must have looked at one of these pass out videos on her phone, right? And so the algorithm on TikTok started pushing her that content. So our kids start to see this content over and over and over again. It wears down their sensibilities, and now they're doing things that they wouldn't have done otherwise. And so it's maddening. But in the UK, I absolutely love Baroness Biba and Kidron. Are you familiar with her?
I've heard the name.
Oh my gosh, she's incredible. She's the one who's really pushed for this legislation in the UK to get change. You can look up her Five Rights Foundation. It's pretty amazing.
Okay.
She's doing some really amazing work out there. Yes.
Of course, I want to tell you how sorry I am, and we all are, obviously. But I want to also tell you how wonderful you are. And just listening to the things you're doing, it's amazing. And anything that you could share with us, like the list that you just told us about of recommendations, maybe there's something we can think of doing with it individually or together. But you really need to know that you are a force and that you're amazing, and that you're helping everyone, and you're getting this out, and you will be getting on shows like Tucker or Laura Ingraham or some show or several shows that will just explode this.
Good. I hope so. We've been on some shows. I've done the doctors. I turned down Dr. Phil. I'm gonna be honest, that's not my jam. I turned him down twice now. I'm like, please don't bother. Please don't talk to me. I don't like how you talk to people. And then he did this podcast where he says, if you talk to your kids about this and they still do it, then they're an idiot. I'm like, no, that's not how this works. This is not how this works. So thank you very much. But yeah, I haven't gotten out there with the paper yet. So other than like local news, but I'm sure hopefully somebody will pick it up and want to talk about it. Somebody now.
Is there anybody else that has any questions?
Yeah, can I say
Yes,
to
go ahead, Sally.
Amy, I watched you, I'm in Arizona also, and
Okay.
I watched your presentation at the Arizona Drug Summit. Thank you so much, you
Oh,
and your daughter. And
thank you.
I second what Renee said. The work you were doing is so important. And this is, I started working on marijuana issues over 8 years ago, and you're right what you said. It's marijuana is just kind of it's overwhelmed by everything else, and I'm so glad you're working with us, because it's a real challenge to get anybody to think that marijuana is that's not harmful. And you have such a powerful story that it is. So I just want to thank you for the work that you're doing. And
So Sally, are you with a coalition in Arizona?
MedForce.
Oh, you're with
that's-
MedForce. Oh, okay.
That's how I know of you. I'm inactive right now. I've had to step aside to take care of some other personal medical issues. So I'm not doing the speaking I once was doing, but I can never quit. I can never not care about this issue. So I keep watching everything that's going on, and I very much wanted to see you tonight. I saw you before virtually. I was at that summit, and so I
My daughter's
appreciate that.
amazing, isn't she?
Yes, she is. And Marilee Foley tells me that she's a force to reckon with too.
Oh my
That
gosh.
she is an important voice in this whole thing.
Awesome.
Thank you very much. And I'm going to make a suggestion to you when you're talking with teens and
Mhm.
children. I don't know if you're familiar with Ben Court. He's a speaker about marijuana issues. He's a very, very accomplished speaker, but he uses something, and he gave credit to somebody else for coming up with the idea, and I can't remember who else it was. So this is not my idea, but I thought it was a fabulous idea too. You say to the kid, put your cell phone in your hand. And do you have protection on your cell phone? Do you have a cover on it or something to make sure it doesn't break? And now take your cell phone and smash it down on the floor. And they're going to go, what? And say to the kid, that is your brain. That is your brain. We're using our cell phones as our brain. You would not take that cell phone and smash it down on the floor. And every time you put a drug or a substance in your brain, you're risking doing that. And you wouldn't do it with the cell phone. Don't do it to the brain that's in your head. It's the only one you'll ever have.
I'll have to look him up. I'll look him up. That's a good illustration.
I thought that was just a really powerful thing to say to a kid. I haven't had an opportunity to talk with a kid since then to try that on a kid.
Well, I'm talking to like 5,000 next week, so I'm maybe I'll get them all to try that.
Yeah, cool.
Might like somebody to snatch it, and I'm not with them a new phone, but I'm gonna try it. Give it a try. Hey, Joanne.
Hi, Amy. My heart goes out to you and your family. And as you were sharing your story about your son, my 18-year-old daughter was walking by and she had tears in her eyes, and my son is struggling with psychosis and he's in a treatment center. And we're in Florida and he was dabbing in South Carolina right before we came. So we didn't, similar to your story, didn't know how long, but he really wanted to use the medical marijuana. And we were on board thinking that the drugs in the streets were harmful. And it's so, with THC and like, you're talking with these teenagers saying, well, it's cheaper on the street and this and that and the other. And I don't know, social media is, it's a poison for the young kids. And especially with kids like our kids, my son, he struggled in school. He was ADD as well. And he would get very hooked on something. So I think it's just an easy way. And I do want to do more advocacy. I was talking with Aubrey about that too. And just how can we join forces together to change all this. But it's hard because I'm a teacher and thinking about Red Ribbon Week, thinking, oh my goodness, and how I never looked at it that way. But growing up, my parents just always said, don't use drugs, and even have that conversation with my own kids. I would tell my
terrified
son.
of my parents. My parents would have murdered me. Like I
Yes.
think that,
No, I did it.
Terrified. I ditched school a lot, but I never did drugs. So I was like so scared of my parents.
Well, and I rebuild in a way because I struggled with an eating disorder. So, that was my way of having control. So I don't know how to reach the kids. I really don't. It's a really hard thing, but
it's like we have to work backwards. I feel like we have to solve this one problem and then we can step back and try to solve this problem and then solve this problem. But how much time do we have?
Well, and the only thing as parents we can do is just plant some seeds, just love our kids unconditionally and set those boundaries. I already know with telling my son, he's asking us, can he use? And we said, you will not be able to live under our roof. We have gone through this process of learning ourselves. We're going to do more harm to him if he does that. But, Amy, I think all the time of someday, maybe I'm going to have to bury my son. It's a reality. But I'm just sending you love from Florida.
What part of Florida are you in?
Tampa. So we missed the whole hurricane.
Oh, that's good. I'm going to be in Jacksonville in November.
Oh, are you going to be talking?
Do you know who anybody horse people here? Clinton Anderson, he's like this rock star level horse trainer out of Australia. He is actually friends with my dad. He and my dad are good friends. And then he saw me on Fox News one day and was like, picked us to be their charity all year. So I go and I talk to the crowd and then I have a booth and I talk to the crowd all weekend and then they give money for this contest that they could win. And it's incredible. It's exhausting, but it's very interesting. Talk to a lot of people who've lost their kids. It's like so prevalent. It's insane. I'm going to put my information in the chat for you guys because we do have a 20-minute documentary on our website. I can't type and talk at the same time. I don't have those kind of powers. That you can watch or share with people that you think might have, might need the message. And if you need anything, let me know. If you don't have naloxone already, get it. Do you know what naloxone is?
Oh yeah.
Okay, it's a opioid blocker. So basically, if somebody is having an overdose from prescription or street, whatever, it basically gets between the opioid and the brain and blocks it from attacking the brain. But you still have to call 911 and administer CPR if you need to, all the things. But the directions are right there on the box. Most states give it away for free, so you can look online.
Amy, I had a question for you.
Sure.
And I know that Daryl does a lot of work with kids on here, but and maybe he could even chime in a little bit here, but this has been a question that that I've kind of had for a long time. What age do you think we should start talking to these kids about drugs? You said that your son was in first grade. You said that they're, what age do you think, from your experience, do you think that they should start, and what do you think the message should be? I mean, I know we should say, don't do drugs, but that's interesting, because Say No to Drugs was a successful campaign back when they had it.
But now
It
it's
was
like
successful.
kitschy, it's a kitschy saying now. It's like people,
Right. Well, they've turned it against us.
yeah, exactly. I've seen the Dare t-shirts and things that are trendy right now. People wear it to be ironic. I think sooner the better. I mean, I think the originating conversations, especially with the really young, is how we want to put healthy things in our body. It's not necessarily about drugs, but we're talking about the healthy things, whether it be sugar, sodas, whatever it is. And that's probably where it starts. And then it just
because the marijuana industry has kind of turned that around, saying it is a healthy thing to put in your body, right? All of our arguments have been,
and that was our
turned
argument with
inside out.
Alex. Right. It's like, and he'd be like, well, it's legal. Well, it's not legal for you. You're not getting it from a dispensary, because I didn't know at the time that dispensary really isn't that different than what they're getting on the street. And I just knew it was more potent. I didn't know to what extent, and I knew that it was going to cause long-term damage to his brain.
Well, I just wish that we could, really figure that out. I know that Dare had an impact on my daughter when it came to driving impaired, a DD. And I didn't know what that was. Yeah, I didn't even know till she was in college. And I was talking to her one time. She said she was going out, and I was talking to her. Oh, don't worry, Mom, we'll be safe because we got a DD. I said, what's that? She said, a designated driver. And she got that from Dare. She got that information from them. And I thought that was pretty impressive that she carried that through her life, So I just wonder, what kind of message we can give and when we should start. But
I think 8 to 11s when we have to start really bringing in the
big guns.
yeah, I guess, just to say this, I mean, because social media, if they're not already on it at 8 to 11, is legal. 13 is the age that everything's set for in most cases. So we need to prime them before they get into puberty and all of that, and prime them not just with Red Ribbon Week,
right,
more than that.
Yeah, I agree that there needs to be a little bit more shock value. I mean, they really need to know that this is really happening. And I know I've spoken at a couple schools, and I'm more on the driving side, right? Because my daughter, was killed by a marijuana impaired driver. So I kind of work in that arena a little bit more. And now the schools are saying, remember when they used to bring in the crash car, and then, they would make this big scene. We probably all been through it. I went through it when I was in high school, a terribly wrecked car. But they don't like to do that anymore, because they don't want anybody to be upset, and they don't want, but which is more upsetting, losing your life or having a little bit of shock value once in a while? So that's always just been confusing to me. Do you like the shock value idea?
To some degree, I like reality.
Yes, reality. And the reality can be shocking. I mean, look what's happened, So, well, does anybody? Oh, yes, Renee.
I have a comment. Yeah. I think there should be something like the DARE program, but not taught by police. It should be. So I don't think drug deterrence should be a legal thing. I think it should be a medical thing. We should have doctors and nurses, because that's
an interesting perspective. Yeah. I agree. But I also think too, when these cops, these sheriffs, they show up at high schools and middle schools, some of these kids already feel like they're in trouble before the conversation even starts. And they're not listening, because they're they know they're up to something, right? And so I think when it comes from a parent, an impacted parent, it hits a little bit different.
Well,
too.
yes, of course, and I've got nothing against the police,
right?
As basic biology, if it's taught, as part of biology, because drugs, they influence brain is a biological organ in our body. It should be part of biology rather than part of, a policeman.
So Maurice, I think you
Sorry.
had your hand raised for a little bit.
Oh yeah, I just want to thank you for sharing your powerful story, Amy. And I have no doubts that you're a diligent mom and that you did everything that you could. There's a few things I wanted to ask you. Have you ever been in touch with a woman by the name of Laura Berman?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean,
I work with her husband, Sam.
Oh, you do? Okay, that's cool. Because I think you guys would be a powerful force together if you're not already working together. And then the other thing is, I think unfortunately, teenagers have been known to experiment with drugs, but unfortunately now it's like playing Russian roulette. I mean, they can't really experiment the way people did maybe in our generation. It just takes one pill and boom, you're dead because of the fentanyl. And I think the other thing that's a big issue is the vape pens. And I wish we could go after some of these companies that are manufacturing these things that are basically targeting our children, from a young age. And I wish there was a way that we could stop that. I think that would be another powerful venue to go down.
Yeah, there's a group, I can't think of the name of it. It'll come to me eventually, but there's a group that's working on that.
Okay.
But everything's so slow moving, right?
Thank you, everybody, for being here. Amy, that's amazing. It's a very powerful story, like everyone is saying, and you have done so much. It's incredible. When I heard all the things you've done, it's very impressive. And I just hope that you keep going and that you have the biggest impact you could possibly have. And we're all, I definitely would love to work with you and hear more about the things that you're doing. I'm sure everyone on here would as well. So thank you so much.